So today I'm with Retired Major William Hoh from the United States Army and also retired senior at the DIA. Mr. Hoh, can you please tell us who you are, your background in the Army, and honestly who I'm speaking with today?
I retired from the Army. I was an infantry officer to start. And somewhere around mid-career, I picked up the alternate specialty of China FAO, China Foreign Area Officer. Because of that designation, I went through additional training and ultimately a payback assignment to DIA. And from that point on, I continued with DIA until I retired from the Army and turned right around and worked for DIA for the remainder of my time. Combined service between the Army and DIA, I have 40 years of government service or DoD service,
Wow.
of which 29 years is with the DIA, both active duty and also retired. My career is kind of interesting. I had no idea I was getting into intelligence whatsoever when I came in. I was a gung-ho infantry officer, charging up the hill and down the hill, and that's my specialty. But because of my language and cultural background, they recruited me more so than I recruited them. Somewhere down the path during my time in intelligence, I received a very strange letter, a form letter for matter of fact, asking me, do you want to join this particular program? I had no idea what it was. Being a good infantry officer, being a good young officer, you always say yes. And that I did. With that, I wrote my resume, I wrote my biographic information, and submitted it. A year later, when I was still inside the Pentagon in DIA, they called me up. They said, "Hey, Major, are you interested in this particular program? Could you come out and talk to us?" At that time, the funny story is this. I said, "Who are you? And why are you talking to me? I know all the CI concerns. Why am I coming out to meet you out in the hotel someplace?" I said, "Could you at least call me in a classified phone to make sure you are who you are?" He said, "No problem." Within seconds, they called me, and my career in the second part of intelligence, the human intelligence, started on that date. It's kind of interesting. As a matter of fact, even after those interviews and after all the other stuff, I really did not know what I was getting into. What I got into is control operation, clandestine service. If you don't know what clandestine is, we're the ones that actually try to recruit people for them to report information to us. DIA made that unclassified a number of years ago.
Oh, wow. Cadets really honestly, when we'll go to active duty one day, we have no clue where we'll end up. And honestly, hearing that story, you ended up in the DIA and you were an infantryman, as you said, charging up the hills. So who knows where cadets can end up just in the future. Path is
Yeah,
really just
that's exactly the point. As we enter service, doesn't matter what branch of service or what MOS or whatever you have, you really don't know what you're getting into. Doesn't matter you're a soldier, an officer, or even a private sector. Chances are your first job, you're just learning, absorbing. And that's the thing I want young officers to remember. Do your job well. Be open to any possibility. You will bump into something you're good at or you love to do. Do not think that this must be my career and nothing else. If I fail in this, there's no hope for me. That's seldom the case. You will find something you like and you will excel in that. Don't worry, but take chances. Do the best job you can, and things will be okay.
yes, sir. And let me transition into the DIA more specifically. Can you tell us some history and background on what the DIA is for cadets who are unaware and what the DIA exactly does?
So DIA was established on October 1st, 1961, as a matter of fact, because at that time, it's a thing called the bombers and missiles crisis. that we thought at that time the Soviet Union had more bombers and missiles than we did. The main reason is the different services report their intelligence to the president, and they tend to, report the high estimate rather than the low estimate. As it turned out, the U.S. had a lot more missiles and bombers than the Soviet. President Eisenhower knew that, had a commission a study, a group to study that, and he found out exactly what it is. And he was leaving office when the information came out. President Kennedy in 1961 told the SecDef to go ahead and establish DIA. So DIA was established with about 25, well, with 25 people inside the Pentagon. Kind of interesting. And they have roughly 10 basic missions. The most important one, of course, is the Soviet Union. DIA grew. We've been around for a while now. We've been around, and then our mission set keep on growing to be about almost around somewhere around 100 different mission set. So one of the most critical thing about or most notable thing about DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, we are the military's premier all-source intelligence. What we produce represent all of DoD. We are the best at it. We don't do a collection like SIGIN, MASIN, or GEOIN, or all those other ins, but we are the one consuming that kind of information and put it together and present some sort of document to higher headquarters. Doesn't matter the SecDef, the combatant commands, or even the president. The information is collaborated within DIA and across the intelligence agency. So, one of the major thing about DIA is, okay, is analytical things the only thing we do? Well, in order to produce an analytical product, you need a lot other stuff. An analytical product has very, very many types. Doesn't matter you're geographically, militarily, science and technology, weaponry, or all this stuff has its own niche. So DIA covers the world. And how do we get the information? Of course, from other agencies as well. But internally, we also have human operation. Human intelligence is one of the main uh, directorate within DIA. If you talk about the human side of the house, you have three basic categories. Probably the most interesting one to military officers is the defense attaché system. But you probably have to be at least a major or lieutenant colonel or colonel. Once in a while, you might even find a general. You're not going to get that coming into the service. You're not looking at that until about 10, 14, 15 years into your service. So that's one aspect. That's a fantastic aspect. In that field, you live in embassies or you work in an embassy environment overseas, right? There's a lot of preparation to that. Another type is debriefing. Debriefing is where you talk to people, gather information. And I had military officers, O4s and O5s working for me at times that actually led detachments. They have a bunch of collector, a bunch of debriefers under his command, both military and civilians, that gathers information. At that time, that detachment was in Japan and very, very interesting. They collect what they have to do, right? You also have the attachments internally. The last type of human operators are the case officer, clandestine service. What they do is we also have all branches, all grays, and a lot of civilians as well. They are specialized in a way. They are assigned to specific geographic location. Their assignment obviously is classified, and they go after targets that we are interested in. Now, human is kind of interesting thing. We do not pick the target we go after. We only pick them because somebody needs that type of information. And that comes from the analytical body generally, because we don't know who to go after. we could try, at least they'll give us the requirement for us to pinpoint the target that might have the information, right? That's part of DIA. But I also ran across officers who are JAGs, uh, you know, lawyers in DIA. There's a bunch of them, right? There's a lot of technical SMT, MISIC have officers, Air Force officers. You have some administrative type as well, not many. You're not going to get a lot of people in logistics or facilities or HR, but you might be in IT, you might be in other fields. So that's a wide range of them. Now, DIA's officer to civilian ratio is pretty lopsided. When I first joined, it's about 60-40, at least that's what they were hoping for. Nowadays, you might be talking about 15 to 20% officers or military personnel to everyday or to civilians that within our workforce. Our workforce is large. Unclassified number is about 16,500. One of the key issues is we work very closely with everybody, right? We work closely with the service components of the intelligence, and we help each other. I have sent people to help the Air Force folks. I have sent people to help the Army detachments and units. We cross-reference a lot. We trade tradecraft skill. We help each other out of that nature. So DIA have a wide range of possibilities. Okay, so but one key thing is you have to be lucky enough to get into those positions. Okay.
Yes, and with that, I'm actually curious, how is it like having all branches and intelligence collab with each other typically? Is it a lot of chaos or,
Well,
you
it's
know,
always chaos, but it's a process in between. But one of the key things you're learning in the modern day warfare, back when I first joined the military, the warfare, or at least the concept we had, is different. Later on, my career is airland battle concept, and then evolve into something else. Airland battle and everything else is joint. In the military is joint, in the intelligence is joint. Everybody is joint. Could you imagine you don't have help from the MASN or SIGINT or GON and try to confirm information? Now, no source, no intelligence could be presented with one source, right? We don't believe one source information because it must be collaborated. Unless it's correct, collaborated, none of the stuff goes to the president.
yeah,
The president don't take one source information, basic normally,
imagine
right?
that.
So it's not a chaos because it's process or coordination process and the information they come out. Let's say NSA send us something. They take on a SIGINT. They will have their analytical group look at that, come up with some sort of conclusion and send that to us. Now we have SIGINT, let's say, then we probably look at GON, then we look at historical, we might look at human, we might look at open source, and all those information come together. And with our own, personal background, understanding of the situation, you come up with some sort of finding, the analytical piece. One of the key things that people must know about intelligence is, predictive analysis, not absolute truth. Absolute truth is called history. Predictive analysis, that's what we hire intelligence officers to do. Hopefully, we have high level of confidence, but to do that, you gather as much as you can, as fast as you can to meet the time requirement needed by the users of that information.
And as in your experience, especially as a senior, is there a lot of challenges with that, just in terms of gathering that information and making those predictions?
Well, there's always challenge of disagreement, dissenting opinion, which is accepted in intelligence. You just come up with a product, you have dissent uh, analysis or alternative analysis. That's acceptable. But for the basic fact that you will coordinate, that's not that hard to coordinate because people are pretty, we're fighting the same enemy. And we're working as one team. And for most part, if you have enough experience, you will see it. And that doesn't mean that everybody's analysis is equal, right? I could tell you some young junior analysts uh, pretty far off base, right?
Hmm.
I was a China analyst for a while, right? Do you know what is required to be a China analyst? You need to learn the geography, you need a political, you need to learn military, and you need to learn the Chinese language if you want to be a good, I don't know, a good knowledgeable expert. You probably need to know Japanese and Russian because
Wow.
those are sources of information that you can wrap all that into. Now you might be using translated articles, but if you could read, original source, you would do that. Now, in today's environment, AI plays a role in analysis or open source intelligence because mass information have its own truth. And to capture that and not rely on that, because we have other information from the intelligence world that absolutely will contribute to the accuracy of the piece of information that the leaders of our country would need.
So it's really good to, if you were to pursue going to the career in DIA, it's really good to know a secondary language. It could take you how far,
Secondary
really?
language is good to know. It's normally a requirement in college, right?
Yeah, it really is, honestly.
Right? But most people forget that as soon as they graduate.
Yeah.
So sometimes, some people will be able to grab an article. For example, I grabbed an article one of my analysts wanted to produce. I said, sir, this is how I look at this, and this is how I'm going to report it. And I look at the article, I said, you're completely off base. They're using slangs that you literally translate.
Hmm.
It doesn't work that way. And you also need to learn culture. For example, culture is very different. We value life a lot. That's very important. There are some cultures, they don't value life. They don't worry about suffering and being tortured as much as we think about suffering and torture. Don't use American biases. Don't use your own individual biases for to make a determination to have national importance. You must be aware of that. You must actually know. So the more you know, the better you are. One of the key things is be very, very why. To be a good intel officer, don't tell me you know this particular topic well, and but you don't know the things that go around with it. Don't tell me you know this fighter. Let's say back in the historical time, uh, during the during the Vietnam War, MiG-21 came into service in 1967. It was kicking our butts in 1967, right? But what do we know about it? How do we go about it? Well, the solution to that is to buy that piece of plane, right? To study and know how it functions. But you need to know multiple things rather than rather than single tracking or pinpoint exactly one thing. Take things in perspective, get a broader picture. It can be attacked one way, could it be attacked in another way, and come up with, you guys always have course of action in the analytical field. You might not have course of action. You might have varying opinion in what's a possibility.
So would you recommend cadets who want to go into intelligence to really just be open-minded, especially as you were infantry, coming into intelligence field, what was your skill base like or in terms of, going down this route?
So to be open, that's some characteristics and traits that everybody, I don't care you're going to intelligence or just a line officer, you have to be open-minded. You have to be curious. You have to continue learning every day. And you have to learn how to put things in perspective. And you need to learn how to balance one thing to another. You're in the military, you know attack is very important, right? But you also know defense is very important. And even more so, logistics is very important. Don't tell me you're going to concentrate on one thing and neglect the other stuff. Patent didn't go anywhere unless we had petroleum, right? Planes can't fly without ground support and all the miscellaneous stuff. So take things into consideration because the battle plan must consider all things. Officer, it doesn't matter you're an intelligence or basic officer, you need to put things in perspective and you need to look at the bigger picture. The maybe it doesn't apply to the Air Force, there are situations in historical past that we know that the unit we put in place is going to die in place. They're the blocking position people. They're not going anywhere. They're holding there until we leave. You heard that term before, right? You know you're going to take a beating. You really don't want to fight it, but you're looking, and there's some other things above you and beyond your control that they are considering. You just have to have some sort of faith and trust in the system that they are doing the right thing for the betterment of a bigger organization, bigger group.
Mhm. Is it appropriate to ask about the recent Signal group chat that happened in the United
Absolutely
States?
not relevant.
Not relevant to the
Absolutely not
DIA.
relevant. So there, you're talking about a millisecond of time in even our own history.
Mhm.
And to emphasize that one thing that will blow away, you know, sooner or later. I don't care which event you are talking about. Cuban Missile Crisis, should probably get a lot more attention to something like this. People will get fired, people will be discovered, people, all kind of stuff. That's the political arena. We in the military should stay away from the political theater because regardless, one of the things I learned as a young officer, you know, as long as the order is legal and ethical, you must follow.
So
You don't have
military.
a choice, right?
Yeah. We're in our own separate world, our own separate problems versus all politics and
Yeah.
whatever's going on over there.
You're an executioner, you're a technician to do what is right. So political discussion should not be on something that we're looking for to build a career and understanding the steps to follow.
I would like to pivot from that and kind of rearrange, and I would say what's really the conflicts right now currently that the DIA is facing with like challenges that's, applicable to say surface level.
Service level is always constant. Doesn't matter what unit you are, and DIA is no different. Uh, Resource management, prioritization, because I'm telling you, we have roughly 100 missions set. And, you know, in order to fulfill all the 100 missions set to the fullest possible solution or potential, you don't have enough resources. And so, what are you going to give up? And how do you tell your workforce or tell the congressman that this is something you simply do not have the resources for, right? For example, I'll give you a old example thing I heard years in the past. I was talking this with another intel agency's senior folks, and they're withdrawing their people from that particular country. And so I asked him, how do you square that with your mission? And you know what he said? He said, if that country falls and it doesn't impact us in 3 days, and about 3 days or more, we could actually put some energy and effort on it, we're not going to follow it.
Mm,
Right? I said, wait a minute. Aren't we supposed to follow every country, know about every country?
hmm
Possible. Right. The energy we put in Russia, China, Iran, and places like that, right? If we just concentrate everything in those specific countries, we're already out of resources. The rest of the world, we're going to have very, very meager coverage, right? So prioritization, okay, and adjusting to it, being flexible enough to flex to, let's say something in country X blows up, right? How
yeah,
could we kind of move resources to that particular problem set at that time, right? And also, is your workforce capable of switching from one target area to another? What are the analytical tools? What are the collection requirements that can allow you to shift that quickly, right? And that's the hard thing. In military, we call that cross training in order to get that accomplished. Intelligence is the same way, right? That is, resources always the hardest. And also, one I could tell you honestly, one of the biggest problem we have in most agencies, I say, to include the military service, is lack of good leadership. What we in the, a lot of agencies and a lot of corporate headquarters and a lot of even the units I've been at, you know what they're good at? They're good at supervisory control, management, and command authority.
Mm,
We're really, really good at that. You know what's really required?
discipline.
Inspirational leadership,
And that's personally, that's my style of leadership. When I
right?
have to lead a group of cadets, I love to kind of use a story or relate something in terms of, hey, you can get from point A to B, knowing that, I went through something similar. Inspiration is definitely one of the biggest aspects I love of leadership.
Inspiration. One of the key things in inspirational leadership, first of all, what do you need to be an inspirational leader? Right. I
Mm,
could tell you in all the government, to include DIA, how do I get more out of my workers? As the leader, that's my job to make my people work harder than they would if I manage or supervise them. Right. And
sir.
one of the key things is, first of all, it starts with self. It starts with yourself. Are you a person worthy of trust and be trusted? Do
Mm.
you do the right thing all the time? Do you do the proper thing, the behavior and everything else? Is your roots grounded? Do you have the technical expertise to help them? Technical expertise does not mean turning screws and nuts. Technical expertise is how do you be a leader to motivate them, to be decisive when it's necessary, be open-minded, listen to them. You know, one of the key thing about leadership, inspirational leader, is emotional intelligence that we don't tend to talk very much about. And emotional intelligence is such critical aspect of it. People, but half the military, half the agency, perhaps say, we don't cry in the office, we don't show emotions, we are professional. But if you ask the question to a big group of people, you were to ask what type of person you would follow to the end of the world. Doesn't matter as real person, fictional, a historical person. You know what type of person they follow and what characteristics and also what traits they have that makes you follow those people. The majority of the answers don't come back as emotional answers. Like they listen to you, they care about you, right? They're open-minded. Seldom people will say they are the technical experts.
And it's interesting because in our air science classes, at least for juniors and seniors, we actually just learn about emotional intelligence and how to apply that when we become lieutenants. And I'm glad they're harping on that. You see, like, this is a global thing across, the whole scheme, agencies, military, emotional intelligence is very big, important to understand who you're leading, how to go forward with that.
So IQ you can change. EQ, quotient, you can modify through your life, and it will change from the time when you're coming in, and you will peak, and somewhere along when you get old enough, you start declining again. And so one of the biggest question is, people don't study that in enough detail to make heads or tail. Okay, there's a lot of emotional aspects of emotional intelligence. But you know what's most important? It's called balance, right?
Mm.
You want to be stern, which is discipline and everything else, but you also want to listen well, right? You want to have empathy, and all kind of the soft stuff, right? But if you're too soft all the time, a great emotional, I cry with my folks when they have problems that you will never become effective either, right? So you
Mm.
have to have an emotional balance. And and if you are given the opportunity to go ahead and figure it out and talk to people or take training or surveys or and have emotional intelligent coaches talk to you, and you figure out how to make yourself a little more balanced because balance is good. Unbalanced emotional intelligence makes you a really mean guy, a really pathetic guy. You don't want either, right? You want to have that balance to make sure you get what you want to accomplish.